the
Sorry, I'm
meeting.
30 seconds late.
No problem. Call the meeting to order. Recording notice.
Let me just double check. Recording good. All right. Good evening, everybody. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government and Access channel in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20. The chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. Is anyone else recording this meeting? Lovely.
Roll call.
Roll call. Scott Horsley.
I am here.
Brian Hughes.
Here.
Tom Cambereri. Councillor Clark.
Here.
C. Crocker.
Here.
Councillor Neary. Rob O'Leary. Luis O'Neill. Butch Roberts.
Here.
Glenn Snell.
Here.
Councillor Starr. As mentioned, we do have quorum.
Thank you, Chris. And how about minutes? Anybody had a chance to read the minutes and like to make a motion?
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Okay, we got a second from Butch. All in favor with the roll call? I always forget we do.
Right now, we don't actually, because Mark is not a member of the committee, so actually we can
All right.
just...
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Beautiful. Next meeting, September date.
Give me 1 second. There's the minutes. Where's my... Made it up earlier today. So if we go approximately 1 month out from today, that would put us at September 15th, or the week of September 15th. And if we do the Monday, the Selectmen's Conference Room is free all day. The Tuesday, it's free after 6 p.m. Same with the Wednesday. The week after, it is free all day, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So whatever anyone...
I'm free on the 15th and 16th. How about others? Anybody have a preference or a day they can't make?
Fine.
Both are good, Z?
15th is great to me.
Okay, 15th. Anybody, is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
15th is a Monday. What's a good time, Butch, since you, want to do 5:30 or 6? Did you say it's the town is available at 6 that day?
I believe it is available anytime. I'm pulling it up right now. That's in the hearing room. So the Selectmen's is free all night.
Okay, and I don't have, I've been comfortable here, and
Yeah, let's
I know
do
it's-
5 to 7 is fine.
stay here.
I'm
5 to
here
7?
or wherever, but I think 5 to 7 is a good.
Everybody else?
Unless somebody wants to go
Anybody
6 to 8.
have an issue with that? I agree.
5 is fine.
5
Five's
o'clock
fine.
on the 15th, let's do it.
So you want it in the Selectmen's?
I think, what do you think, Z?
I don't care.
Let's keep it here.
Okay.
This is comfortable. Five o'clock. Good.
If we don't get any more people.
We're going to get a tough commute for all the DPW folks. They gotta go.
We can actually all remote in from our desks too.
Okay.
We could.
You could do that. Whatever, I don't care.
All right, so we had a few items on the agenda tonight. The first two are related on IA Technologies, and Mark Milne is here online with us. Mark and I talked on the phone a little bit about some updates on potential financing programs for IAs, but maybe I'll turn it over to you, Mark, and give us an update on where you think we're at.
Thank you, Scott. So I was asked to look at the Community Septic Management Program as a potential funding source for IA systems for the town of Barnstable. And this is a program offered through DEP as part of their annual intended use plan. They usually set aside a sum of money for communities who want to want to access the Community Septic Management Program. And what this program does is it loans money to community, and then the communities can use those funds to loan money to homeowners who need to upgrade their Title V system, and that includes innovative and alternative systems as well. So those are eligible for a loan. But this is a loan program. So what happens is the homeowner would enter into a betterment agreement with the town. And the advantages of doing that is, as opposed to going out and having to borrow the money themselves, would be that there's no collateral other than we do have to place a lien on the property for the betterment. There's a better interest rate usually that goes along with this. There's no income verification for the homeowner process, no income verification process that they need to go through. And the loan can be added to their tax bill on an annual basis, and we can apportion that over up to a 20-year period. So this is very similar to what the county's program, the Aqua Fund, does. This is the program that they have access to borrow money from the state revolving loan fund through DEP's program, the Community Septic Loan Program, to issue the betterment loans that they manage on a countywide basis. Barnstable could do the similar thing that the county's already doing through the Aqua Fund. So I guess we would need to decide whether or not it makes sense for us to do our own betterment loan program through this community septic management program, similar to what the county's already doing, or if it makes more sense to just let the county continue to tackle this this program on a countywide basis. The other idea that I had for financing innovative alternative septic systems to help homeowners out would to file a home rule petition with the legislature, allowing Barnstable to implement an exemption program to provide a property tax exemption for homeowners who chose to implement an innovative alternative septic system. This would be similar to other exemption programs that are out there. Of course, this one being unique, it would require legislative approval, which is not unprecedented. There are other communities out there who have created special exemption programs for certain types of housing, for example, affordable housing, rental housing for year-round rentals as opposed to short-term rentals. Barnstable could file a home rule petition seeking to grant property tax exemptions for homeowners who install these types of systems. Of course, that would come with a cost that we would have to factor into future budget development if we were to have something like that pass, because it means that we would have to set aside more property tax dollars for exemptions for qualifying homeowners if we were to adopt something like that. So, but that's what I've researched, Scott. I don't know if you had any other questions for me in regards to that community septic management program that we talked about. But those are some of the ideas.
Go ahead, Steve. So in the first part, with the two different programs, the one which is the county and the other one, is it an either or? So can you do both, or it has to be one or the other? In other words, I don't know what the capacity and size are of those.
Are you asking if we could do an exemption program along with the betterment program?
Well, that would be a separate question, but there were two different programs that you identified. One was the Aqua Fund, and the other one was a different program. And I just wondered if those two were either or if we could avail ourselves of each of them, or maybe they have different interest rates. I don't know what.
No, they're the same thing. They're essentially the same program. This is how the county created their revolving loan programs through the community septic management program. Barnstable could create the same program using that same funding source, but we'd then be competing with the county. And so, I don't know if it makes more sense to consolidate that program effort like it is currently under the county's management, or for Barnstable to go do its own thing. But it wouldn't be that you get one loan from the county and another loan from the town. It would be one or the other.
And I think the distinction is the Aquafund program is between the homeowner and Barnstable County Health, who administers that program, whereas this would be through the town. I think that's one difference.
That's the difference. Yeah, you'd be getting a betterment loan through the town as opposed to the county. The county's program, they do the same thing the town would do. They attach a lien to your property if you do take a loan out through them to finance your Title V system upgrade.
Question. You mentioned that it would be similar to Aquafund, and I'm wondering, could it be more similar to SRF? And what I mean by that is, with SRF, essentially that financing provides a subsidy to homeowners, where the homeowner pays, let's just say, 20% of the cost of the sewer, and the town puts the other 80%. I'm just making those numbers up on the tax base. Could something like that, the cost share, be done through the community septic program, such that people on the IAs would have a similar subsidy from the town? Would that be?
Yeah, I think the way we could implement something like that would be through, creating adopting a home rule petition, asking for an exemption, the ability to create an exemption so we can exempt like 20% of the cost from property taxes, give somebody a credit towards their property taxes for a certain percentage of or a fixed dollar amount. I would probably recommend a fixed dollar amount towards the cost of their IA system, in addition to borrowing the balance at a low interest rate.
Mark, I've got a question for you. I know and I'm going to use the wrong terms, and I apologize. It's Rob, by the way, in the back corner. At one point in time, the town was using rooms and meals taxes and things of that nature to help fund the CWP. And I think I've read that since we started that, the state came out and said there's actually more elbow room on those that you could utilize or do, which I don't believe the town has ever actually leveraged or taken advantage of. Is that true, or am I misunderstanding that whole situation?
Yeah, it's partially true, Rob. That's the Municipal Empowerment Act that you're referring to, and that has not been adopted yet. But that act does propose some slight increases in the local rooms tax and local meals tax, but we're waiting for the passage of that Municipal Empowerment Act in order to, and then if it does pass, the council would have to approve or accept those increases through a legislative process.
Follow up on that first. I was going to ask a similar question, and that is that could this qualify for the loan forgiveness possibilities on the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund? My understanding is, for that to be possible, you need to be on the IUP list, and this program is on the IUP list. It's currently $5 million appropriate. At least that's my understanding. So it is, and the other thing I've learned from Karen Perry, we recently had a meeting over in Tisbury to talk about this exact same thing, and she mentioned that it's up to the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund board to make that decision, and that's a member from each town. So if they vote to say, yes, we're going to allow the 25 or 50% subsidies for the community septic program, they can do that. That's my understanding. I'm just throwing things out there because I guess these may be a little better than rumors, but I'd love to try to figure out if these are true, and we can run these to the ground at some point, because that's the other possibility, would be to get the subsidy, not subsidy, but the loan forgiveness, if that's true, through the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund.
Yeah, Aaron would be the best person to talk to about that. Or Christie, absolutely, yes, because that all depends on the governing regulations and whether or not this would qualify for that. And and they could, if it doesn't currently, they could try to request a change in those governing regulations that would make it eligible. But they would be the best people to inquire about that.
Looked at the legislation creating the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, and it says specifically innovative and alternative septic systems can be part of that. So the language is there. And I'll try to share that with people here. So that's another. Chris, you wanted to ask something?
Yes, thank you very much. Mark, are there any other municipalities in the county that are already utilizing the Aqua Fund for the IA systems? I mean, is this process in place at the county level already?
Well, the program between the county, the program at the county level, I don't know if they've loaned any money out to a property owner for an innovative alternative system. I would think they probably have. I think, yeah. because it's absolutely eligible for the loan through their program.
Okay, Brian.
I did. Mark, is there a limit to the amount of property tax exemption that would be possible?
No, we would have to establish that locally as to what we would think it would be an appropriate amount. Again, I would probably recommend a fixed dollar amount as opposed to a percentage, so that every property owner gets the same contribution or property tax exemption.
Does that then have to be approved in turn by some governing body?
Yes, it would. A home rule petition would have to be filed with the state legislature, and they would have to review our petition and approve it. First, it would go for the town council for their approval, and then it would go up to the state legislature.
The last thing I'll mention is I did speak with Nate Keenan, who runs the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, which is the source of the SRF money. And he indicated that there is some guidance being developed from DEP on this exact issue. He couldn't tell me when we might see that, but it's in the works. So we should be hearing a little more from DEP on this, which would be helpful to clarify what we can and can't do with this funding.
Mark, how long might that process take? Town council approves it, then it's going to go to the legislature. We're talking a year, years.
I would say it would at least a year. Yes.
Yeah. Others?
One other question.
Yeah.
If we did that and put that in the toolbox, would that mean that we're obligated to use it? Or could we get permission to do it, but not have to actually implement it unless we reach certain criteria? For instance, having a alternative septic system that achieved a certain level of performance or something like that.
Yeah, I would include that as part of the home rule petition, what the qualifying criteria would be in order to qualify for the exemption. That would be an important inclusion in that home rule petition.
Okay.
Other questions, comments on this? It's very encouraging. Yeah. Well, Mark, thank you. And I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion. We're all kind of learning here. So
I have one other question. Yeah. So if we look at the math that you said, I think the total for the Aqua Fund is $5 million.
That's what's appropriated now, I think.
That's what's appropriated now.
Not much.
Yeah. So I mean, just to put that into context, if a unit's $50,000, it's 100 units.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if they were able to use part of the state tax credit, maybe it's 200 units or something like that. So we're not talking about big numbers here, right?
That's the other thing that needs to happen is we need to figure out how to get more funding into that.
Right.
But hasn't the county didn't the county Aqua Fund recently get a plus up of some type? Or they're better funded than that?
From an ARPA money, maybe?
I
A while back. Yeah, I think you're right. But that might be different than what's on the IEP
part of the
list.
value of leveraging the county is if the county is better endowed, I don't know if that's the right word, funded, whatever the word would be, they have more money available to them.
Right.
Capitalized, yeah, they may be better capitalized, I think, Rob, than the program manager that I spoke to up there, Alice Ryan. She wasn't sure what their total capitalization was, because it's been in place for a number of years, and I think they've participated in several loan programs with the SRF over the past 20 years. Which they could be somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million. I don't know, but they've had a number of loan programs or community septic loan programs that they've participated in over the past couple of decades.
Who is the town's representative on the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund?
Mark.
Okay. Is he? I assume he's aware of this discussion because my sense is those people are going to have to start thinking and talking about this. Because it sounds to me from Aaron Perry, they have to make the decision if, in fact, those funds can be used. So,
Mark, don't you attend those as well?
I'm sorry, Rob, I couldn't hear you.
Do you also attend the Cape and Island Trust Fund meetings, or is it purely just Mark L's?
No, Sean O'Brien attends those with Mark.
Okay, I knew there was a finance person that did. I just thought it was your report.
I have one question. I may be naive with this, but is the wastewater being funded by bonds? Is it strictly a cash flow? How's the financing done? Is it totally cash flow, or is it bonding that we're planning process also?
Mark.
Predominantly borrowing. Yeah, we either borrow through the state revolving loan fund, which we've been successful so far to date, to conduct most of our borrowings through that. But we have issued some smaller general obligation bonds for funding some of the.
I've been a fly on the wall with this amount of knowledge in here. And when I wasn't, first meeting I went to, they started to talk more about the IA systems. And I asked a fellow who looked like he'd been around longer than I had. He says, yeah, that's going to be a technology that's going to be discussed as you go further and further.
Yep.
The discussion says, well, the technology is improving day by day by day by day.
Mm-hmm.
So looking down the road in the second 10-year, let alone the 30, all of a sudden these IAs are cheaper than hell.
Mm-hmm.
China's #1 economy now. They're pumping out these IA systems for 2 cents on the dollar. And the letters go out and the guys go, I'm not going to do the sewer. I'm going to get an IA system. You guys go take care of your sewer by yourself. That's going to affect the cash flows. It seems to me Mr. Bondman is looking for his interest every 6 months. And the cash flow is going dribbly away. Is that something to consider? Is that putting the horse before the cart?
No, it's not an option that the homeowner gets to make at this point. It may be in the future, but
There's a lot of what ifs in that. Although I do think there's a question there that Mark, maybe you can talk about a little bit. You and the town have been very, very successful at funding the first phase of the sewer expansion plan. But eventually that runway is going to get shorter and we're going to have to lean more on borrowing unless you see other avenues showing up. So we're going to have to look for some kind of ability to raise more money, whether it's Prop 2.5 or something else. Is there any visibility on where we're thinking about that? I guess to me the context is I'm not sure even though I'm a big proponent of IAs, I'm not sure a lot of them are fully ready for prime time yet, to your point. It may be some years from now before that really becomes a big at scale option. But I just wonder where we are in the financing, because to me one of the reasons we really need to look at a plan B and alternative septic is because at some point we may run out of borrowing capacity, or it may become more complicated. I don't know if you have a thought on that. I know it's a crystal ball, so.
Yeah, it's a relevant question though. I mean, we're constantly monitoring this, and it's the time frame for us to start talking more about creating additional revenue sources is now. We everything that we're committed to date, we have identified the resources necessary to make the loan payments that we're projecting for everything that's been committed to date, which is in excess of $300 million. But when we start adding the 27, 28, 29, and 30 fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 30 projects to that borrowing formula, we're running into that problem. And before we can authorize additional borrowings, we're going to have the conversation about where the resource is going to come from to make those repayments on those loans. And so, we just passed the FY26 capital program. We have the resources to do that. We just adopted a flow neutral policy, which should make us eligible for 0% financing through the state revolving loan fund, which will improve our financial projections, most likely allowing us to move forward with the intended projects for FY27. But after that, we'll have to reevaluate and see where we're at.
And an add-on to that is the town has an excellent credit rating currently. Do the rating agencies chime in on, hey, you're looking really good right now, but if you go further, it's going to, we're going to have to lower it by a notch or anything. I don't know how those conversations occur, but they must occur somehow, right?
Yeah, we have them every year, and they ask us what our 5-year plan looks like for our entire capital program, not just the CWMP. When they monitor our outstanding debt as opposed to what our debt capacity is, we could, at any point in time, we can have outstanding loans that total 5% of our equalized valuation, which is close to $1 billion. We're not close to that. We have about 165 million right now in outstanding debt. We've committed to a couple of $100 million more on top of that. So we're well below what our borrowing capacity is. But that is a conversation we have every year with bond rating agencies. And that it'll be a few years before I think we approach that $500 million level of commitments if we continue forward the way we are with the CWMP. And at that point in time, I'm sure they'll probably reassess us where we're at, and but it really depends on what our budget capacity is to pay those loans back. Not so much what the outstanding balance is, but what our annual budget capacity is to pay those back. Because as you put more and more loans on your books, you lose budget flexibility, right? Just like you think about it in your personal financial situation. If you take out more and more loans, you have less and less flexibility in your budget to buy those necessary things that you need on a daily basis. And the town's no different than that. And there comes to a point where you have a certain percentage of your operating budget tied up in fixed loan payments. We're at a very good position right now with that, but several more years down the road, we're going to be tighter and tighter, and they may take that into consideration and into the bond rating at that point in time. But we're far away from that right now.
Thank you.
Yes, Chris.
If we recommend that the low interest loan get funneled through the already existing county program, my understanding is that's a loan. When we're looking for new funding sources, if it's a loan, doesn't it get replenished once it's been jump started with this infusion of DEP money? I mean, is that self-sustaining to some degree?
Yeah, I mean, loans certainly are they're not the same thing as a recurring revenue source like a new tax, right? So, yeah, I mean, loans are just a way to finance construction costs, but you have to pay those back, and you have to create the resources to pay the loans back, and that's really what we're talking about, is creating additional resources so that we can borrow more funds to do more construction projects. And have more resources to pay those additional loans back.
I hear you. My point is just regarding the Aqua Fund. Isn't it self-sustaining because it's a loan, and the loans after a period of time get paid back to the Aqua Fund?
Well, yeah, they get paid back to the Aqua Fund, and then of course the Aqua Fund has to repay the state. But it's a 0% loan that they have with the state, and what the Aqua Fund does is they loan the money out to the homeowner. They attach a betterment. The homeowner pays the betterment back to the county, and the county uses those resources to pay the state back. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
One hand loaning the money to another hand, loaning the money to another hand.
But in Aqua Fund, is the county that is probably the look-through on the hook entity. If we were to create something as a town, we would be the look-through entity, would we not?
That's right. Right.
So, Mark, were we to do that, I'm assuming there'd be some sort of administrative cost the town would incur to create its own loan entity and the people that you need to manage. I mean, I'm assuming there's rules and management requirements to doing that. where the Aqua Fund already has that in place, correct?
That's right. I mean, they have the infrastructure in place. They could probably take on a lot more, quite a few more loans without having any impact on the staff. Where if we were to take something similar to that on board here internally, we'd have to create similar loan staff like they have. And, creating a doubling your administrative staff to create another program that for something that already exists, I'm not sure if that makes good financial sense. Unless their program wasn't functioning well, then it might make sense, but it seems to be functioning well.
I have one other question, and that is there any precedent or benefit to consider a differential subsidy cost program for IA upgrades? Let me give you an example. If somebody wants to build a new, let's say, expensive house on the water, maybe they can afford to pay the 100% of the in sort of exchange for the permit. Whereas if in a few minutes we're going to be talking about upgrading people within a certain distance of the shoreline, they're not looking to build a new house. We're asking them to do it because we want to clean up the water. And there might be more of a rationale for the town to finance that. So I'm just wondering, is there any precedent? Is that something the town could consider, or is that just too complicated and maybe there are other pitfalls that I'm not aware of to considering a variable subsidy financing for different triggers?
Do you mean need-based?
Well, I'm just thinking, there's a lot of different triggers, the health regulation, new home, upgrade, expansion versus, again, we might tell somebody within 1,000 feet they have to upgrade within 5 years. They're not asking for anything, but we're going to make them do it through a health reg to clean up the water. That's a different trigger. And I'm just wondering if there's any value in considering. Of course, the value I'm thinking about is then we're talking about financing sources. Well, now we get talking about totally private money. Doesn't cost the town anything, arguably, if you make the homeowner pay for it. But I'm not sure that's fair in many instances. So the question is really just a general one. Is there any value in considering a differential cost structure or precedent?
Yeah, I certainly value in considering it, and it would take some thought as to how to go about doing that. Certainly don't want to penalize somebody. Also want to provide incentives, and those could be based upon different criteria that you come up with. But all of that would probably require some kind of authorization to create such a program. I'm not sure if you can do it at the local level under the existing laws that we have. So we may have to draft something up for the legislature to allow us to do something like this.
A twist on that idea that I think is particularly critical for our conversation is, even should somebody choose to put in one of these systems on their own accord, because they're putting in an accessory dwelling unit or because they're within a certain distance of whatever it happens to be, we're going to run into the issue of the sewer is coming in 5 years, what do I have to do? And so I don't know. I know right now it's pretty much a 60-day or a six-month period. Is that what it is? 6 months. So now I don't know whether that has anything to do with your world, Mark, or how that takes place. But to me, that's a really, really important part of the conversation we got to figure out. We talked about a 20-year pass or what have you, but that's going to be a critical decision.
So there's two parts to that. The one part is we're mandated by DEP to make certain hookups in time to be able to fix the estuaries.
Okay.
So that was the nitrogen piece of that. The other part to Mark's world was that he's counting on cash flowing in from projects at certain periods of time. And he can't, as I understand it, assess betterments until they actually go through the process of hooking up and doing that sort of stuff. So both those were there. And we also spent some time looking at the experience we just had in Stewart's Creek, just had been 20 years ago,
Right.
and how that got implemented. And that didn't, I think, arguably wasn't as smooth as it probably could have been in terms of when people hook up. In fact, I think there's still a percentage of people that have yet to still do that.
Right.
So when we went around this time, we said, look, we're going to, once they're there, you need to do it. If you can't do it within 6 months because you've signed up for a contractor, but they're also busy, you can automatic 6-month extension. If you can show health that you've already signed up with somebody and stuff. So there's 2 components to your question. I'll let Mark speak to the financial side.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So yeah, certainly, if we've created all these opportunities for homeowners to connect, and it's important from the environmental standpoint for them to connect, for us to achieve our environmental goals here. But it's also important for them financially to connect because we need that utility rate revenue as part of our financing plan for this entire program. And if they're not connected, we're not getting the utility revenue.
Well, again, Mark, thank you. Like I said, I was starting to say, this is going to be an ongoing discussion, so we may see you back here again, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
At a future meeting. Thank you so much for doing that.
Before you go, I have one question though. So we have a great plan thanks to the DPW department, and how much flexibility is there within that plan to be able to move the pieces of the puzzle around? And so, by that I mean, and I haven't looked at the whole plan, but if we're planning a certain scale, I presume at the plant level, you have to plan for a certain amount of capacity. But if you're planning to build pipes through a certain area, you're going to know what those costs are. Either you're going to go into that area or not. So there's kind of several parts to building out a system, I presume. I haven't done it. You guys have done it. And so I guess I'm just thinking out loud. I've always thought that certain areas geographically might make more sense for IAs if they work. For instance, if you're going down a hill and the pond's at the bottom of the hill and there's 100 houses around it, rather than putting in a series of pumps to pump up for gravity, that might be an area where actually it might make more sense to have alternative septic systems. But what I don't know is how that might fit into your planning process, Mark, for looking at a plan longer term, and whether that is too complicated a dynamic to consider, or not. Still early days. We're still on paper on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that's an engineering question. I'll leave it to the engineering professionals in the room.
Technically, depends on the sub-watershed you're in.
Right.
So some sub-watersheds we don't have the option. And we've had to basically max them out for storing in order just to get the model to say that we're going to achieve our goals. People can disagree with the model, whatever, but that's what we're regulated by. There's other watersheds where there may be some flexibility on that to have some of that conversation, and we've done some talking on that. Right now, we're sort of waiting to find out where we end up on those IA systems. We've had the conversation with the whole Phase 3 stuff. I mean, that's out there too, and that sort of thinking, but on a grander scale.
Right.
So I think as we go through these 5-year updates, and as we get better and better understanding of the technologies that are evolving as we go, we'll be in better positions to figure out how we can leverage them, where we can leverage them as the instead of. Right now, what we've talked about a lot is doing them in addition to get some stuff in the ground and start figuring out what's going on, start getting that going. And then as we proceed forward, we can start figuring out the instead of stuff once we start to understand what they're actually really doing. But at the end of the day, we have to achieve the TMDLs.
Right.
And the MEP model is the way DEP currently uses to say whether you're going to or not. And what it tells us is that there's lots of areas where we're not going to be able to achieve that with a hybrid system currently, which is what you're talking about, sort of a hybrid system.
Got it.
All right.
Thanks. Thank you.
Well, Mark, again,
Thanks
thank
for your time,
you.
Mark.
We should move on to the next item.
Thanks, Mark.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So still in IA land, I think when Chris and Rob and I and Brian talked last, I think we want to revisit the setback distance discussion and possibly Phase 3 and see if we could come up with a start to think about zeroing in on a recommendation, because we're getting there. Looks like we're going to be doing it in October, November, Chris?
So that's actually a good question. I've heard different things. When does town council want to have this in front of them and when doesn't it?
I'll ask. We have an agenda setting meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
But in any
question.
case, I think, we spent a lot of time, Amber, the work you did was great, to give us some ideas on areas we could go to. But I'm not sure, how we make this decision. I can't think of a technical reason for 500 versus 1,000 feet. More is better. That's one way to do it. But certainly, I think there's some benefit to getting things near the shore and having a quicker response. But I guess I would entertain thoughts on how we might try to get at this question about the numbers that are on the agenda are 100, 500, 1,000 feet. And if you may remember, the Board of Health is getting interested, I think it's fair to say, in considering a regulation that might trigger this.
And they're coming in next month, right? Is that
Yeah, they were unable to come. I think we're going to have them back again next meeting, hopefully.
Because the 100 was their suggestion that they could do that
Right.
tomorrow.
Yep. That's why we added that. Right. It's almost.
They kind of said they're almost doing it already.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so it sounded like that's,
Yeah.
of the low-hanging fruit, that's the
Right.
lowest of the low.
But I believe that one is for the variances. That one is for the variances.
So if there were
when they
variances,
request
it triggers it. Yeah.
close enough to a
Right.
water body.
Which?
So I'm concerned about the rest of the town. And it just seems to me that we can't ignore the rest of the town. And that's currently what our plan does.
When you say the rest of the town, outside of Three Bays watershed, is that kind of?
And I mean, outside of the proposed sewering,
CWIP plan.
that's 12,690 households that are not going to be addressed in 30 years with our plan. And they're going to continue to put nutrients in until we do something about that. And certainly, I don't think our ponds can wait 30 years, or there'll be swamps. And so it just seems to me that we need to address that piece as well in our discussion.
Let's keep in mind that the ponds are a little different because we're talking phosphorus.
I understand.
The group of IAs we have in front of us are not really phosphorus reducing.
No,
We need to address it, but I think they're two separate.
well, not necessarily.
Okay.
If we put in best alternative,
Yep.
Patrick, like we're talking about, as if we required someone that, for whatever reason, had to put in or upgrade their system on their own. If for now they were only putting in a nitrogen system, at least we're taking nitrogen out in the future. And as the phosphorus systems come online, we would have the mechanism in place and we would already had the discussion. And then that would just roll into that. So,
Should we put the map back up just while we're starting this conversation? Because I'm starting to think myself, where do we talk about this?
I mean, I have all the maps. So what do you want to do?
Show the one that has the setbacks.
That one. That's it.
Can you make that full scale too? Yeah.
So what you're basically saying, what I think I hear you saying is that, and I don't necessarily disagree with this, by the way, that you would end the ability to replace the Title V with the Title V in the town of Barnstable.
Yeah.
You would have to replace the Title V when it naturally died or whenever the trigger was with the best available technology, which would be identified by the town itself.
right.
And do we have? We don't have this overlaid with the sewer plan, do we? Or is that part of this?
thought we had.
I don't think we made that figure.
I think we
I don't think you have
took
to.
it out, it was too
So
complicated.
just go back to the.
I can just grab the. Where is it?
I understand Butch's point. For example, in West Barnstable, we're not going to be sewered.
You know what?
We're not going to be sewered at my property in West Barnstable.
Right. Only Bush Point. Are you in Bush Point?
No.
No.
But there's also no incentive for us to pay more money for an IA system. I'm trying to wear this personally. You know, how do we incentivize? Because I think right now maybe instead of ordering that somebody should upgrade to an IA system, that they maybe we first start with an incentive.
That's where some of this financing
I agree.
would be a big component.
So if there was a extra low interest loan with Aquafund, that might be a first step.
I mean, right
If you want
now,
to take baby steps.
True.
right now, a private homeowner in Coast. I'm sorry.
I was just going to add to that because I obviously work really closely with a couple of loan specialists at the Aquafund. So the Aquafund can be used for the septic upgrades, but not if you aren't mandated. Like if you aren't coming into compliance with regulation.
Not a question.
Right, mandate has to be a
So you
reason.
can't
Has to be a
just
trigger.
choose. You can't just choose to upgrade your
Right.
IA and then go apply for a loan.
But if the town had a regulation requiring it,
That would
then
be
they can get
that
it.
would be
So it's
mandated,
not
yes.
good enough that your
Taking
drinking water
proactive.
well is 100 feet away from your septic system. That's not good enough. See, that to me is something the town should be able to mandate and say it actually is good enough.
That's a big
Because this gets to
distinction.
what Bruce has written about a lot, which is subsidize to equalize, which I kind of think is what you're talking about. And I think about it that way too, right? And to me, there's a couple of different parts of the puzzle, right? There's the 100, 500 foot, 100 foot, whatever, where there might be a regulation. And then there are certain incentives that may be created that are going to get people to do it on their own. Our Board of Health says we're going to adopt the 660, gallons per acre. Now we've got an ability, if you put an IA in, then that's a trigger to say, okay, I can add either an ADU by right, or I could add a bedroom or two to my 1 acre property, and I want to do that, and I'll pay for the whole thing. I think we do have to, if we can incentivize some of this to learn about the IA mechanisms, how they work, how we're going to, police them, because they have to be policed, and, how all that's going to work. But I think that would be a really important thing. Plus, I've always thought, if you think that where you live on the north side are going to vote for Prop 2.5 override to pay for the south side, my guess is not so much.
I heard that loud and clear when you're knocking on doors.
Right.
I don't want you to. We don't want to pay for that high in a sewer.
Yeah, why
That's
would I
what
do that? We're not going to do that. But if everybody was getting something, maybe there would be some incentive to do it if we could figure out a mechanism to build that in.
And that's why I was asking about I can't remember the name of the thing you said, the municipal.
Community septic management plan.
No, not that. No, the fact that there's more room inside of rooms and meals taxes and things of that nature, that if you leverage that money and then put it to a dedicated fund to do just kind of this sort of thing,
right?
It's a new funding stream coming in to do this kind of stuff.
Right.
It's not big enough probably to do, massive grandiose things, but it might be big enough to be the seed money to get this thing off the ground.
Right.
That's why I was asking that question. If that gets approved, there's opportunities there.
It just seems like we need to consider that and work it into a recommendation rather than just ignoring it.
Well, it does sound like there's going to have to be regulations saying you have to do this in order to qualify for funding.
Yeah.
Same with the state tax credit too.
Yeah.
Can you put the other map back up, the first one?
It's hard to remember this one.
Is that the one you had?
Yeah.
Can you make it bigger again? Yeah. Full presentation.
Sorry, this mouse is being
Okay. So this shows 500, 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000, right?
Right.
So 4 different. So how do we, does anybody have any thoughts on how we get closer to, if we're going to recommend one of these distances? Bruce?
It's really rough, but if you've got 5% of the sewer systems breaking in a year town-wide, I don't know whether that's the right number, but I thought I heard
Breaking,
that
you
last
mean they need to be replaced?
needing to be fixed, upgrade, and you want to install 100 houses in a year to learn about this stuff and get our feet in the water, you got to get 2,000 houses in that definition. So you can just say move the boundary to get the number of houses that'll hopefully yield the number of installations you want.
Yeah.
That's one way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and along those lines, the other thing I keep thinking about is if somebody's system fails, they're going to have to spend some money. They have to dig up their yard. So the marginal cost of adding the treatment then, as opposed to doing it when the system's working perfectly, is very different.
Yeah.
So it strikes me there's an opportunity, an opportunity cost savings to link this to what you're talking about.
So there are two different things as I've understood the committee's discussion going on. One is sort of, I'm going to call it the Butch camp, which is Title V should broadly be being replaced town-wide, certainly in 19th watersheds. The other school of thought that I've heard was I'll call it Scott's camp, which was there's also a time of travel issue here. We want to try to get the stuff faster, so we want to mandate within certain distances so that we're getting going on that stuff. And then there was my camp about the whole phase 3 thing, which I guess it's a totally different thing. But I don't necessarily know that those are in conflict with each other, but it's to try a way to organize this conversation. What the vote, the decision that was on the agenda was for Scott's camp, for the time of travel mandate one, because we couldn't find a technologically sound reason to say 500, 1,000, 2,000. At some point in time, someone just got to vote and guess and say, we'll do this. Or the 100 that the Board of Health already says they can do. That's kind of what we're looking for guidance from the committee is we want to go back and start to write actual recommendations, which we'll bring back to you, which then you can approve, which then eventually can go to town council as a recommendation. Right now, within the Scott camp, if we decide to go that way, we don't know which one of those distances we're going to start to settle on as we write this thing. That doesn't exclude the Butch camp, unless you say, frankly, the best way to do this is Butch's approach. We'll just sort of pick them away as they start failing and do that. Just to kind of frame this a little bit.
I think in the Scott camp, you have 1,000 feet to the water, and it's part of the whole nitrogen reduction strategy. And then we get back into this conversation about should there be kind of a town subsidy for that kind of thing. And then the town-wide thing, be careful with the nexus of that. In regards to, let's say, Chris, your place, you're not in 19% of area, your place has been zoned to protect private wells. What would the town's nexus be to require that up on Cedar Street, things like that? I think, but I don't know. That might be tough unless everybody just embraces the idea, like no more septic systems. We're going to do Title V's, and every citizen, whatever it comes up, is going to have to pay for it. And it's not. And then under which ones are CWMP kind of oriented to get to the compliance with the permit, and what other, and then there's others that won't have anything to do with it. So I think that's a key thing to think about. So I can see 1,000 feet, time of travel, it's part of the permit, and And then you have to think about this subsidy thing, because I think it's is it replacing the CWMP in some of these areas? We don't know yet. But if it's doing nitrogen removal, and that's why we're recommending it, we want to see it happen. Then this subsidy thing, and I think we need to.
Tom, you're making me.
And if we're just grabbing a number of 1,000, what's the subsidy?
Can we
number
even
that
recommend
grab
a subsidy without going to the legislature and doing all the stuff that's being talked about here? Can we do that within just the context of the town?
Well, that's why I was asking that question to Mark. I was wondering if the town has the ability to be differential and say, in this case, they make them do. I mean, Tisbury is requiring the upgrades. There's no funding. They just homeowner pays for it.
Right.
Sometimes they call and say, "Do I really have to?" And the answer is yes. And I say, "Okay, thanks," and they do it. That's how it's working at Tisbury.
Which is what happened when Title V came out.
They're doing it. They're paying for it.
And that's what happened when Title V came out. I remember my cesspool died. They said, "Sure, you got to put a Title V in." It's like, "What's more money?" It's like, "Congratulations, you have to put a Title V in."
So how about?
But we have a little bit of complexity here because we haven't done the overlay map looking in phase 1, 2 against this.
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
Which I think is, you got to like it.
Let me throw out just a starting point, maybe. I mean, I count 1,000 feet's a nice round number. A lot of 3 zeros. So what if we said within 1,000 feet, within the phase 3 area, or outside of proposed sewer areas 1 and 2. So that would include phase 3, would also include the areas not being sewered, right? And then think about triggers along the lines of new construction, expansion, failure as a first cut, because again, those people are going to be spending money.
Yeah.
It's probably about half the cost.
And the heavy
So that's what
equipment
you
is
have.
on their
That's
property.
going to be like all of this and all of this.
Yes.
Is that about right? I think that's about right, isn't it? You know.
So you have statistics up here to inform that discussion. I mean, you have phase 3 here. That would be there's about 160 of them that are in phase 3 that are within 1,000 feet.
Right.
You have 250 of them that are not identified in the CWMP. So you add the 2 of those together, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're talking about 400 basically. As far as the overlay, I mean, basically the areas that are in, if we're talking about the 3-base watershed, the areas that aren't in the plan would basically be Grand Island, effectively.
Right.
Most of the rest of it is
Grand and Little and to it.
phase 3,
right?
Up here, phase 1 here. Rest is effectively phase 2,
right?
More or less, in summary. And you have the other map that we could pull right up, right?
You would also add 500-foot properties.
Yeah, so I mean that's what it looks like.
What's the current timeline thinking, Griffin, on phase 2 at this point?
What are you getting?
When would that be built? Yeah, phase 2.
Well, we're in year 5. We're approaching year 5 now, right? So of phase 1, so it would be 5 years from now that it would be started.
1 to 41.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So I mean,
it's 5 to 15 years at this point, not 10
and
to
it
20.
looks like the town's pretty committed to phase 2. Fair enough, right? So that's probably an area that doesn't make a lot of sense to require upgrades if we think 5, 6, 7 years down the road, right? So that's why I say exempt phase 1 and 2.
Oh, good idea.
Unless they fail.
What's that?
Unless they fail.
Well, I don't even know about that. That's a good question. If they fail, do you make them go the extra $30,000? But if the sewer's coming in 5 years, I don't know what the answer to that is. That's a good question.
15 is.
Yeah, whether it's 5 or 15 makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, this is a very complicated recommendation, and remember on Long Island, what they did is eventually they set all this discussion aside, and they said we're going to sewer 50%. We're going to do 50% IA. No model, no, just that's what we're going to do. So at some point, you got to make a decision, right? And this, I don't think we're going to have a perfectly modeled reason. Amber asked earlier, how do you pick between 500 and 1,000, 1,500? I don't think there's any analytical way to make that decision.
Yes, there is. It's a bold.
So it's more of a policy decision.
It's the total load.
Right.
In 2,000 feet, is it twice the load in 1,000 feet, or is it less dense out there, so it's not nearly contributing as much?
And this can always be amended too, right? This is a starting point. And So that was my thought. 1,000 feet outside phase 1 and 2, triggered to certain homeowner initiated.
So it wouldn't be on a time trigger, it'd be on a
That's what I'm throwing out there.
life event trigger,
Right. Yes. Yes.
so to speak.
And maybe you could that could be in there too. That could be there.
Just trying to make sure
I'm just throwing something. I just want to throw something on the table to get started here. That's all.
Well, one thing we could say, if you're going to be sewer 10 or 15 years, you don't have to do it. But if your system fails and you put in an IA, then you're given a grace period when the sewer does come. Just let that happen in the Stewart's Creek area.
That's possibly, then you run into what Mark was talking about is funding.
Right.
The town doesn't get the revenue for
The other thing you have to think about on that too is that the watershed permit now will have distinct nitrogen removal milestones at each phase, which are predicated on the projects going in and people moving up. So you're gonna start to become cognizant of a nitrogen balance if you're doing some of that.
Well,
So
that
you're-
assumes the IA system is not pulling out much nitrogen.
No, that's assuming that the IA system's not pulling out the same amount of nitrogen that the sewer system would. Sewer's zero. So, whatever that delta is, that's my point. You're gonna have to, Griffin's guys are gonna start thinking through that balance because you still have to meet, assuming the permit becomes the permit, we still have to meet those levels at those times.
As far as you know, will that delta change as these systems get more mature, or you're not going to count on that?
Honestly, I don't. What I think you just asked me is, as the systems get older, any one particular system gets older,
No,
gets
as
more
the
efficient.
technology gets more mature.
Oh, I'd assume that the systems, as technology improves, will, because everything seems to improve. Now, what will be allowed to credit for them, I think, is a relevant conversation too. Because at the end of the day, with those systems, DEP says you can count on this.
Yeah.
It may be doing better or worse than that, but that's what you're going to count on. Like a lot of the existing ones are 19. You can count on 19 milligrams per liter. Whether it's doing better or worse than that, I guess is kind of irrelevant to the conversation with them. That's all you can take credit for. Right now, I think you guys are looking at 10.
Yeah.
It's kind of where you're looking at. I mean, you're gaining 3, but you're
Close to 5. But I think that the timeline is really important, and we're going to have an adaptive plan anyway. And as the model becomes more clear that you've got something that can approach 5, it's going to be a completely different look than something that's 19.
Right.
And so, but I think it's worthy if we build in a recommendation. I hate to continue to study things, but to continue to study things and kind of make it a plan B. So to be prepared for plan B as these things are going to happen. Because to me, the two fulcrums are the technology is going to change and hopefully improve. And then everything I just heard from Mark Milne is the budget. The budget's going to be a factor. And sooner than, in my mind, what I heard was sooner than you think. And it's taken longer. I mean, I always thought we would already be voting on an override. We're not. But, my guess is by 2030, it's a real conversation.
So I would remind everybody, and Scott, you mentioned it earlier, you're going to be back here in 5 years.
Right.
Maybe not you personally, but this committee will be back here every 5 years. It's built into not only the CWMP, but also the permit. That there's going to be every 5-year looks. So that, to your point on those fulcrums, as those fulcrums mature and as we start to understand where you're going to get another peek at it, so to speak, every 5 years you do it. So if we put something in place now, you get a chance 5 years from now to go, was that a good idea? Was that a bad idea? Do we want to modify it to this direction? Modify it to this direction? What's the current environment regarding technology? What's the current environment regarding finance? And you'll have that conversation. You'll be able to do that. So there is some plan B-ish. Part of the system.
What the systems get approved for ultimately matters when you're having an OR conversation too.
Say it again?
What the systems ultimately get permitted for will matter significantly when once you're getting to an OR conversation, which is what we're talking about now, right?
I mean, the end conversation is easy because you're just doing it on top, and they're not going to. It's like, great.
An OR conversation becomes a math problem.
Right.
Yeah. To your point, Scott and we were talking about stuff not covered under phase 1 and phase 2. So at this point, that's just
That's an and. That's fine.
gravy.
Yeah, that's all gravy stuff. That's not an issue.
Right, so we're not really talking about, are we going to be able to make the...
Understood. No,
Yeah.
got it. But as we were talking, the conversation is maturing into these other areas. Just want to put that out there. And that's why I've been a proponent of and from the get-go, is that we do and now, and then we see where we are in 5 years, and we see, see where that's all playing out. And stuff. So that was the whole point.
Now, I would just make the point that Tisbury's had their trigger regulations, 4 years, 5 years? They've already made 2 or 3 or more adjustments to them. So you don't have to wait 5 years.
Yeah,
to make a better course correction.
But at the minimum, you're going to talk about it every 5 years.
Yeah.
So the other thought I'm having is 1,000 feet, if these are triggered by, new construction, expansion, most of the real estate value is going to be relatively high within 1,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get a 18K tax credit, almost all of them. The marginal cost of doing this rate, what's that?
It's only if they're full-time residents.
That's true. That's true. But what was I going to say? The marginal cost of doing this, if they have to build something, is probably $30,000, because they're going to have to do the septic, the tank, and the leach field if they a new home or expanding it, whatever. So the marginal cost, and many of them will get the 18K tax credit, and many of them can afford it anyways. So this might be something that doesn't really cost the town a lot of money. But
I like the idea of doing something outside of, sewer phase 1, 2, in these same areas where we know it's going to be necessary, and it becomes both either a stick. You have to do it if you're doing something, but it's also got to be a carrot. So we put you to work to say, but you can add an accessory dwelling unit.
Yes, an incentive.
You don't even have to rent it. You can just add it by right. You can add bedrooms. And that's a big deal. I know I was down visiting with somebody on Prince Cove. Really? I could do that? I mean, if I did that, I could add a bedroom and Dinah add a bedroom. And I think a lot of these people will just add the system, on their own nickel.
To increase the value of the house on resale.
Yeah. So Scott, you're saying one of the things being proposed is the 1,000 feet upgrade to IA system outside of phase 1 and 2 areas.
Yeah.
So there's phase 1 and 2 areas are the red areas and the green areas.
So
right.
In total.
So it'll be in the white and yellow areas.
So white and yellow areas. Okay.
But I also think, Chris, that to me, somehow this body has to recommend something along the subsidized to equalized to deal with people who are outside of this zone.
Yeah,
and figure out a way, even if it's just, carrot related, if you will, in being able to incentivize people to put in an ADU. We're in a housing crisis. So doing that and having something where you can actually, help the housing part of it, and by the way, create income, which has been done on Cape Cod forever, right? I mean, so having something that you can rent on site makes a lot of sense to me. Not that we'd have to figure out how not to just be creating a million different Airbnbs. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the ability to do something that actually does address the housing part of the equation, and incentivizes people to go ahead and put these systems in. Because I think that one of the things we have to do is learn about these systems.
Jose, are you suggesting this as in addition to the 1,000 feet that I'm recommending? The ADU trigger could be anywhere?
As far as I know, it can be anywhere. I think it's an ADU by right, as long as the Board of Health is going to adopt the 660.
Right.
Which it sounded like the two Toms that's the way they were going, because that's going to be the state recommendation. I don't know. That's not well known, as far as I can tell. I think people don't know that, don't understand it, and maybe there's ways to incentivize that at the town level around that, or through a partnership with HAC or something. I don't know.
How does that dovetail, perhaps Griffin might know, with the flow neutral policy that just fell into place?
Ultimately, the flow neutral policy is relative to flow along the sewer. So if we're talking about IAs, it really doesn't matter. Right. That's the point.
And I was just thinking about this, financial equity. It occurred to me that somebody in my neighborhood wants to put in on their own an IA system, and if we, and it'll cost what, $40,000, something?
Well, whole thing probably 50 to 60.
50 to 60.
Yeah.
So the people along the sewer, it was recommended by the town that hookup charge would be $17,000 per hookup, and it got reduced at the council level to 10,000. So basically, those along the sewer have gotten a subsidy from the town, a significant one.
And that's why I was asking Mark about Canton Wilson and the same thing about it.
Yes,
I
right.
think you can.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that
But you
that
may
would
not-
be fair to the people in my community.
Yes.
Except the people that are needing to it are within the nitrogen sensitive area required to do it.
I mean, it's not the fault that it happened at the council level, and it was brought up at a.
Again, it strikes me that we tie the triggers to a homeowner edition, new home edition.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Then it's their cost, like, you know, they want to put an addition, this is part of the cost of doing it. But the affordable housing ADU is a little different, I think, that might be warrant a subsidy. But then when you go in and mandate everybody upgrade 1,000 feet, even if you're not doing addition, that's when that's when the town needs to get involved and subsidize that. Because the only reason you're making permission to do that is to help the public benefit.
Yeah.
The homeowner's not getting any benefit there, whereas the person putting on addition is. That's why I see the difference there, in terms of which fund you pay for. And that's why I was asking Mark, if we do this, it will be differential about.
So a moment of clarification, like DEP 660 with the systems predicated upon what, a 440 flow per acre for nitrogen sensitive area, but an IA system will go to 660. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so now the town of Barnstable is ours, nitrogen sensitive threshold. I thought it was like 330, right? Which kind of changed the math. I don't know what positive. What are you talking about?
Title V flow is restricted to 330 per acre, but I think the suggestion is that
Oh,
if you have an IA, you would be able to increase that to 660. I think that's what's being discussed.
Why did I give it 440?
It is 440 Title V,
but per acre.
The town
at one point adopted.
Oh, that's right, it's a local regulation.
the board of health, the town of Durham estuary overlaid it.
Right, and by the way, the 440 is a number for drinking water, it never had to do with estuaries. So the fact that it's now being proposed there's zero math behind it.
So, you know, question then locally, put an IA system, got a 3-bedroom, 330. I suppose we put an IA system and get a 4x4.
Yeah. But I like Z's idea of, you know, incentivizing the ADU affordable. That's could be another component.
Well, and it goes back to some of the math that Rob has talked about for a long time, which is, you know, is looking at load versus flow. Really shouldn't look at just flow anymore, but it's more about load. Look at all the math, right? Yep. So Chris or excuse me, Scott, Griffin, what we're talking, do you have numbers to say what that is?
How many
white areas outside the one?
You go back to the one that's the previous slide, yeah.
They're up in the upper right.
Okay.
Yeah, is this installed areas or is this just this?
That's all the areas that are on.
Yeah, so it's those.
Okay.
That's just most of them.
Yeah.
And they're separated by setback.
Yeah, so they're separated by setback, so.
All right. What is that? Yeah. Touch it.
So. This is the 1,000-foot column, for instance.
Right. Yep.
There's 1,145 total properties in there. 776 of them are in the CWMP, identified to be sewered. 251 of them are not identified to be sewered. These are how it breaks out by phase. So
But what would be total within the 1,000 feet outside the CWP area?
This one right here.
No, it'd be more than that. wouldn't it?
Would it also include phase 3, so that would be 160
Yeah.
plus?
Yeah, it'd be phase 3 plus that.
410.
Oh, so this is outside of the Seward area, so if you're adding in phase 3, it'd be that plus that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you add all that
So it
together,
would be 400 roughly, 410.
that's just for the 1,000, yeah, 5,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to add this one in too. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so it would be both these columns.
Okay.
So
And the number?
320,
So it's almost 1,000.
about 1,000, yeah.
So I guess the other thought I would throw out there to consider would be maybe it's all the systems within 1,000 feet outside phase 1 and 2 sewer ring. Maybe the reg over some period of time, say 10 years, they all have to get done. But when you trigger it, you have to do it right away. The expansion or home or build.
Well, if you do it over, I mean, the generally accepted design life, I understand it was longer of the septic system of 20 years.
I don't think that's true.
But the quoted, I'm trying to, the quoted design life.
Yeah.
So if you did it over 20 years, then theoretically, within that 20 years, the vast
Oh, I
majority
see what you're saying.
would have been naturally triggered anyways. Anything left over at that point, you're cleaning up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're trying to find a time period, use 20.
Right.
You've kind of picked the most of them up by natural triggers anyways. So they didn't all start at year 1, they've all been in place anyways.
Right.
Would that amount of time be sufficient to reduce the load for these what was required?
And you put one of them in on top of the sewer, on top of the CWP plan to reduce the load for what's required. You know what I'm saying? So anything that's accomplished, that's the beauty of the and policy, because you've already done the model, you've already done that stuff. Anything that's accomplished above what's also going on from Griffin's team and ours is going to be above what's required. It's going to be a benefit above required.
But they only measured nitrogen reduction in nitrogen area. Can I say it?
Right, nitrogen. Meaning like where we monitor the
So if I put a system in West Barnstable that reduces.
Somebody's actually monitoring Barnstable Harbor, right?
Yeah, we're conducting a water quality monitoring. I think he's wondering if we put a system in the Barnstable watershed, if we get any credit for that.
We don't get credit for it other than we can see that the value, we can see whatever's happening at the Barnstable Harbor sampling site, whether it's getting better or worse, et cetera. But there's no attaboy, I guess, that comes for it, but it's a good thing to do.
And that non-CWMP is set back within 90% area.
Correct.
Yep. So that would be in addition to the CWMP, you're taking more out, and it may be that you're taking it out well in advance of the implementation of phase 2.
And you remember, the plan's always been predicated on sort of adaptive management approach. And when we first wrote the plan, we talked a lot about the idea of doing some at-risk things in marshes, rivers and stuff like that, with the hope of maybe eventually, we're not doing phase 2. Because phase 3 is the most topographically difficult to sewer. The homes are spread out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Will we be able to accomplish that? I don't know. We'll find out. But this is in line with the sort of philosophy of doing a lot of different things. The bogs, which I understand are recently improved at this point, the pond, dredging, eventually aquaculture, these kind of things, the storm water stuff we've done, all of which gets monitored as such. The other piece to doing more is something Scott and I've talked about, which is the sampling was done 20 years ago. Some of the development that's happened in the upper portions of the watershed is probably still moving south, has come within the 100-year travel time it takes to get. So So that nitrogen may not even be at the estuary. So I don't feel guilty about overshooting by doing the CWP and additional things. I think there's actually a safety buffer by doing that. That if additional slug gets to us that we didn't count on or didn't think about initially, that we're fine.
I'm still worried about the 10,000 that's not addressed anywhere in this discussion. Which 10,000? We got 1,269 in the non-CWP. Yeah. But you've got 12,690 that are not addressed by the plan, period.
In the what?
In the what? The work.
No, that's, and I agree with you, but maybe if we have, a staged approach, if we say, let's take the 1,000, I like that idea within these areas, generally the white zones on the south side. And if you say it's 3 to 5% of those, so 30 to 50 units is probably what we're looking at annually. Dan would say, well, that's not very much, doesn't add up very much, but I would say it adds up over time. And I think that it may be also worthy to look at what are the implications of that math as an and. So what could the and mean? Maybe the and means there's a minus on the other side, so we don't have to do as much. So that's a possibility. So it could actually be, 1 and 1. So it's not just a one thing. And then if we figure out how to advertise, incentivize, ADUs, adding a bedroom, getting into the the load conversation and allowing people to do more. In my mind, that's a potential real win that's actually not costing the town anything, but people want to do it. They want to add bedrooms. And, to me, around the pond, that could be a real thing. Maybe there's a regulation around the pond that if you're within or be some number that is actually going to be a phosphorus filter as well.
Well, we can't specify that yet.
My push for help do it.
We don't have a system. I don't think we have a phosphorus removal, a general, I mean, you guys are going close on the nitrogen removal side. Yeah. I think the phosphorus is in the next 5-year period we'll be having that conversation.
Right.
Hopefully those are coming along at that point.
Can't say it right now.
Right.
So does anybody have other thoughts on a proposal? I mean, we're not gonna finalize this tonight, and I think we want to get something in the bag here as a preliminary thought.
It sounds like we're settling on 1,000 feet more from as a default. That no one can think of any good reason. There are no reason to be less, but not enough of a good reason to be more.
Can be in a subsequent review, right?
Yeah,
That we can.
It ends up being more later.
Yeah.
It's a start.
This is, yeah.
1,000 feet is a 3-year flow time. That's pretty nice, right? Yeah. Start seeing some benefits. I've always felt like the time factor is something to think about. It's about 1,000 feet. Is it 1,000? The figures. Okay. You will first one.
So do you want us to go back and try to, we'll be talking to you, Scott, in between, we can try to craft up some recommendation to bring back to the committee to see if it actually reflects this conversation after.
Yep. Please.
Then we'll go through that.
Yeah, I think we got it. That's right.
Did we put in a recommendation that
The town work on the pond.
yes?
Don't forget about the ponds. That we say.
No, to incentivize,
Yeah.
people to upgrade their system, period.
Town what, or
Town.
within Manchester area, yeah, so beyond the requirement.
Right.
Well, so that's when, I think that's what Zene's starting to get at with, think about other incentives beyond the mandatory.
Right.
That's a good idea, yeah.
So one question I had to the group, or one question Scott and I talked about a little bit in terms of the incentive piece, the different ways you can incentivize. For people that are replacing a septic system outright, this doesn't apply. But if they're just supplementing their they're utilizing their existing tank in leach field and they're trying to put in the additional tank, there's a potential that one of the incentives would be the town would actually contract with a concrete manufacturer, just whatever, for those tanks. And now that falls very much in line with what we do currently on the whole grinder pump stuff, where we provide the first grinder pump, et cetera. So if you do something of that nature as an incentive to say, look, the town has a contract, we bid it publicly, so we've gotten theoretically the best price on these tanks. We're not gonna own them, they're yours, but if you're going to do this, we'll give you the tank. You know, and then you go put the tank in, you own it, you maintain it, that's your tank. You know, that's something we talked about before.
Say what's the tank been costing?
How much is the actual concrete tank? $2,500.
Yeah. But you're talking
But
about
with all
the type of stuff inside it too.
It's just a concrete tank.
You're talking about a fully
what's
constructed.
Bob put into the, I'm sorry, what's the, John, what's John put in?
23,500. Right, right.
But that's his profit is in there too, so I don't know what they're roughly.
Are you asking his cost?
I'm throwing an idea on the table, I'm not, it's not fully baked.
Well, one thing,
I get it. I mean, and that goes back to what we looked at with SRF, which was the ability to actually pay for the equipment alone.
Yep.
No, because you can't pay for the other part of it. So it does fit into that part of the conversation. I mean, I think that's really relevant, but probably for future reference. Much as I love that system and, you know, talk about it all the time, it's not fully ready for prime time at a scale of hundreds of thousands there. So,
but Rob, I think if the price is 23.5, the last number I heard too, privately with homeowners, I would guess that the way to do a bulk purchase.
And that's the thinking, you can do economies of scale, the town can do a bulk purchase.
Right.
You know, it bids it, so to speak, against a couple of different concrete suppliers. And there's ways that the other thing that I've heard tonight, and there was another community I worked in where there was a section of the community that was not being sewered at all, and a section that was being sewered. And to incentivize the section that was not being sewered, what they did was saying that basically septic pumping fee is free going forward.
Septic what?
Pumping, you know, so the maintenance of your septic tank, you're still doing it, but when you hire company X, they know you're a town of Barnstable resident, and as such, it's a free service to you going forward.
Oh, that's a good thought.
I want to put those on the table as you're thinking about
well,
something.
the idea of bulk purchase like that, I think is particularly important for this whole conversation around IA. Whether it's the pumping service or whether it's, you know, maintenance related stuff, contracting related stuff. I think one of the biggest things that we've looked at to contract these things is how much does it actually cost to put one in. There's a wide variance of what those costs would be. And so if the town is working to vet certain vendors or whatever, make a big difference. Scott's run into that because you saw, you know, estimates from $30,000 to $90,000 in roughly for the same thing. Right?
Is there bedrock there?
Sorry?
Is there bedrock there?
No. No. No.
Just, they're profit. People are busy. Contractors are busy.
Well,
so
also people haven't worked on these
too.
They don't know, you know, somebody's not gonna step in for the first time and say, I'll do it without having worked on it. You gotta figure it out.
That's how you make real money, right? This times two.
Right.
You've been a consultant?
You too, buddy.
Back at the same time.
All right, I think we've had enough. I think Rob and I and Brian and Griffin and whoever else wants to pitch in, we can grab something.
Want to chime in?
Yes.
I do think that there should be some kind of math done to see.
So what's
The math.
Math.
Yes, to evaluate these proposal about this ADU, if in fact it's gonna bump up with the flow neutral. Do you think that's not a thing?
So you're concerned about the risk of violating.
Yeah, the whole thing about flow neutral.
You think it's just a sewer?
Yeah, it's only a sewer.
Oh, it's sewer.
Yeah.
I don't think it.
Yeah, it doesn't, it won't
We'll leave
factor in with what's on the sewer.
All right. That's
Yeah.
good.
All right, let's move on. That was good. That was really good. Thank you. I guess we can get to, John Lynch has been waiting patiently. 6 months is on the agenda. Here we are, talking about, grinder pumps. So,
Sounds insignificant with all this stuff going on here, so I apologize for,
do you want to start or do you have anything to say about this initial? Okay, go ahead, John.
anyhow, a little history of me. I They had homes in Chatham for 40 years, moved out was only for a period of time, where I became a little more familiar with water situations out there, and moved back to Centerville in 23. And one of the processes since I've been here, I've been trying to get up to speed on the sewer system, what's involved. And one of the things that's kind of sticking in my craw, partly because I'm a grinder person, I'm a lowlander. And it seems to me, and I look at a lot of the material that I got from the DPW and looking on the computer and various town papers around the Cape, it seems to me when these sewers were promoted to the various towns, there was, and somebody talked about the expense. There were always two items. One was the sewer assessment, in this case, 10,000. And the other was for individual properties to have to pay for their own preparation of their lots to hook up to the sewer system. In any of the literature I've seen, there was never any emphasis about these guys called grinders. And I think when the towns determined they were going to use a gravity flow system, it automatically created a subset of property owners that had to go through an extra process of money in order to comply with the law. And at this point in time, I can say, well, and everybody used to say the same thing fair. In my travels, I only bumped into one guy in Chatham. He was kind of complaining about a guy that had a $30 million house complaining about $100,000 for hookup. And he kind of thought that was a little bit insincere when you bitch about $100,000 for a $20 million home. So, and that's the only time. And he might have an axe to grind against the guy because he didn't get his business. So anyhow, but what I kind of realized since jumping up and down is going to try to the town managers and say, look, it ain't fair. The cost of the grinder system should be spread throughout the whole universe of the town. That's the fair thing to do. Well, realistically, I understand that ain't going to happen. And I think one of the things that it seemed to me that when it was being promoted, because of the fact that grinders weren't specifically mentioned, it was a little bit disingenuous. And I think whenever the hubbub started in the various towns, the solution was we'll give them a pump. And I kind of refer to that as the Marie Antoinette decision, let them eat cake. Because the fact of the matter is a pump is one thing. Extra utility costs, service, replacement, so on and so forth. So there's more to it. The other things that I've heard discussed in various towns, some of which I guess have been implemented, some were talked about, some may not, may have been tabled, I don't know. But what I would ask, if you're going to talk about this at all in your final report, for consideration besides the pump, some towns have recommended E1's going to be the provider of the pumps for the various towns. I think is that correct? E1 is going to be the pumps system.
That's the way
What some towns have suggested, and I don't know if you've done, to go back to the E1 provider, say, how about an extension of the warranty? Instead of 10 years, make it 15. In other words, the town negotiated on behalf of the pumps that they're buying and the people that have to put them in, make it a little bit juicier, make it a little bit better. The other thing that I think is probably a better idea in addition to, is that the town designate a handful or less contractors who can service these pumps. So that something goes wrong with the neighbor's pump and it's serviced, it's going to be serviced by the same companies that are servicing them all. So there's some uniformity to the whole process because there's going to be problems with these things. One thing that I didn't see talked about anywhere or heard about was that in some cases, these individual property owners are going to have to pay lots of money to upgrade their electrical systems. Some towns, I think Chatham at one point or Harwich had talked about a $2,000 stipend for these properties. Now, whether it's $2,000 in general or $2,000 specifically for electrical upgrades, I don't know. But that's another one of the things that they spoke of. That's about all I come up with. I'm kind of resolved in the fact that to have the cost spread across the town at this point, it's not gonna work. But there ought to be some upgrades to just the pump. There's a lot more expenses than even off the town. I'm told we lose electricity around here for sometimes days. That's gonna cause the pumps to have some special servicing to be done. And if in fact these things pump up, so they back up because of the electrical outage, you go to the insurance company and say, hey, Mr. Jones, he's gonna say, well, you're not covered. He's gonna say, okay, you're covered, but you get a bump in your insurance bill in the following year, where you're gonna get a letter and we're not gonna renew your insurance. So there's unintended consequences, I guess, that just were assigned to this that maybe were not thought out. I think in the promotion process, you accent the positive, you kind of negate the negative, and just the fact that after the fact, the town, not through their own volition, but I'm sure through some speaking about it, the town decided, well, let the meat cake take the pump, pay up, hook up, shut up. I don't think that's enough. I think the town owes more to the set of properties that I don't think was considered very much during the process. I know I did read some literature where there were studies done as the most efficient service, and this is the one that was chosen, but it automatically made that second-class citizen that has to pay more money out of their pocket in order to share the benefits that spread over the whole community.
Well, I guess I have a question for the engineering guys here. Is it correct, these grinder pumps are for high pressure sewers, not for gravity, is that right?
Or for low pressure sewers or situations where you need to overcome gravity.
Right, right. So if the home is located in such a way that it can't flow by gravity into the sewer. Right. So what percentage of on the sewer people are being grinded?
It depends upon the location ultimately.
I mean, just on, but average, half, 10%, 90?
I don't have a definitive number to throw out. I mean, it's going to be very case by case basis and project by project basis. So
I had asked that question for a number of times, and the answer was, we don't know until the engineers get in to do their
on the Strawberry Hill Road project, for instance, there's like 10 to 15. There happen to be relatively small. On the Finney's Lane project, when we're on the Finney's Lane project, when you're adjacent to the 15 water, you have a house that's below the road, you need a pump.
Okay. Yeah, no, I do think it's an interesting conversation. So Scott and I talked about it a little bit. You know, the whole system rolled out 30 years as 80 something big scale pumps. Isn't that right? Some number like that, 83.
Yep.
I would say. And I was thinking, and we have a data scientist in our office who's pretty good with ArcGIS and all that kind of good stuff. You guys probably can do this too, but I was thinking it'd be interesting to look at, okay, what would we do if everything was just gravity? How much could we do on that? Or how much could we do with a smaller number? And to your point, what about this, what about looking at areas where the individuals have to have grinder pumps? To me, it's part of it really is a math question. Now we get back to the question, well, if you don't have enough, we can't have capacity for the system. I get that. But George Hoyfelder, interestingly, has always said there can be a checkerboard system. There can be a system that can work that way. It requires thinking about it differently. And to me, it's something that's worthwhile, looking at. I'm willing to help my people.
Yeah. So every project that we do, that we design, the first thing we do is we do basically a schematic design where we say, these areas are going to be, and we're not going to be able to get by gravity because of topography. Can we put a municipal pump station here that will solve that? And then we'll go down that rabbit hole and try to figure that out.
Right.
Generally speaking, ownership of land becomes a problem. Right. Because we got a low-lying cul-de-sac, for instance, that we don't own property on. Where are we going to site the station? Right. You need land to do that. So there becomes a technical limitation or a physical limitation to be able to actually install a municipal solution in a lot of cases.
Right.
So that's the first step in every one of the projects. As we go through that evaluation, we try to maximize gravity. We try to
obviously you do. I get that
because the grinder pumps become, we don't let them install like the grinder.
We looked at that a different way in the future and said, okay, in the future we might have alternative septics that can get to 5 milligrams, they can get to, for all practical purposes, getting that you take everything out and it's 0. Okay, the same level as the plant operates at. And so I'm just saying, if you looked at it that way and backed into it, I wonder how that would look. I wonder how it would look financially, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's an exercise. I'm not saying
But in that case,
you should
though,
do it. I'm just saying it would be interesting.
Well, let's play that out a little bit. I don't know if that would resolve the complaint, which is that an additional cost burden on those homeowners. Because if instead of saying a grinder pump procedure, put an IA system, the same argument will be back.
But I'm not sure it'll be that much different, really, if they cost the grinder pump and take the $18,000 tax credit and the cost of the IA. It's not going to be that far away from the number of grinder pumps. So, what's that?
They're also
Grinder
not
pump
paying
would be
for
less, right? But they also take that 100% load and going. Right.
So
that means that's a. I think this is an important issue. I think it's really important because so far I've been putting in frontline sewers, flat areas. You're hooking in people that are there. Now we're going into phase 2 area, in the Lake Wastewater, going into this topography, going into my neighborhood, which has slopes on it. I don't know where I'm way in there or not, but I've been having conversations with Griffin about it and saying, well, okay, well, what can you do? And I talked to push these guys to be as innovative as possible to figure out how to get a pump station in our areas. That's what they have to deal with, ownership and wetland issues and things like that. Well, just dig a big enough holes and get it all. But I think it's a big issue, and I don't think there's not really that much. There's nothing written about it that informs the public and that, and so I think it needs to be kind of a premier kind of public education piece that's going to move forward in this next 5 years as we're developing plans. Because as we've asked the staff, how many are there? Well, not really know. No, maybe you got there. Right? Yeah, I don't know. So we don't know because the detailed engineering plans that have to come through are all getting let out as separate RFRs for these contractors to come in and deal with those details. So I don't know. We need to really agree.
So one of the things that wanted this group to address that they 200 something existing grinder pumps in town before we even started the CWA or something like that. One of you wanted the town is traditionally, and it's not a policy that I can understand been written. Traditionally taken the approach that they'll buy the first grinder pump for the whole world. That's not a policy that I know of that's ever been codified or formalized. It's just what the history is saying, and so we're assuming that's what we will continue to do. Does the town want to continue to do that? Does the town want to negotiate for a longer warranty on them? Does the town, these kinds of things are all, right now, the guidance we've had is purely the history of how it's been done to date. But not a policy on it.
One of my first reactions to that, Rob, is I keep hearing some people still saying you can't spend public money on private property. And I had, well, happening, right? Happening, right?
Well, we're donating it to them.
Sure. So it's happening. You can't do it, but
well, that's why
we buy equipment, but we can't finance it through SRF.
Oh, I see.
Comes out of the.
I see.
We
Is that the reason why?
We pay for it out of the project budget on big projects. But we pay for it. We don't finance
It's
it
still
through
public
SRF.
money. So
It is correct.
But that's why the tank idea.
Yeah, right.
For tank idea, because it's right up to analogous to it.
Am I hearing that I don't fully understand it? Thank you for. But is part of the issue the equity issue? Like I have to have a grinder pump and I have to have it for public benefit, but I have to pay for it privately. Is that part of it?
Well, I have to have it because otherwise the sewage backed up in my house.
Right.
But my neighbor, who's a bit higher up, doesn't have that problem.
Okay. So, but is the reason it's coming up is because of the equity issue? Some people pay for it, some people don't. Is that? This is the preference. People would rather have a gravity system because they just put a pipe.
Sure, of course.
Now you have a pump there, you've got to pay for it, you have O&M, and if there's electrical power outages, which tend to be around here, or maybe more with climate change, You've got a very limited storage capacity, to deal with.
My house has water leak, believe it or not. So I have gravity to a septic system for the old part of the house. And when they built the new part of the house, when they built it, the way the flooring all lined up, they couldn't gravity from the new part into the old part to the septic system, so I have a grinder pump in the new part. So I maintain my grinder pump in the new part, and I've got gravity up my septic system.
And that was all paid for privately.
That's all paid for by me.
That's because
And I have a well as well. Yeah, by the way, so, you know.
Is your grinder pump internal or?
It's internal. So I have.
That was triggered because you wanted to build a more.
It was built before I bought it, but when they built it,
Yeah.
that's.
That come
Not
back,
that unusual.
I come back to the same thing we were talking about before with IAs. If it's being done because somebody wants a bigger new house or a bigger house, then sounds like a private thing to me.
No, it's not any different than people who have extreme costs for connecting to the sewer. They have a huge yard and they have to put hundreds of feet of pipe in.
Right.
They're paying a lot more to hook up that sewer than the person next door who runs 20 feet out to the street.
Right.
Who's paying for that?
Right.
They are. That's an artifact of their home, their topography,
Right.
their property.
Right.
I mean, we all have things that cost us more than our neighbors because
Right.
it's
True.
either the way we want it or the way it is.
I mean, I have a grinding pump at my house 25 years now. Made me put it in, I'm in a legal duplex. So I had to have 24-hour storage, things 10 feet deep, 5 feet wide, 2 pumps. No problems with it, 25 years.
Then you're gonna go home tonight, Glenn?
And the electrical cost on it, it's negligible. It's just me and my wife, but it's not that bad. I'm a working bread, but it's not terrible.
I have no
Yeah, it's not.
fix on that. I can't imagine it's gonna be a hell of a lot.
No, you won't notice it.
But there is
It's not like running a hot tub or
something.
something. Yeah.
Funny thing
it's not.
about it is all the stuff I read about the second part of the hookup, which is a prep. Everything specific mentioned in the literature about grinders specifically, until this publication came out in 2024. That's the first thing I've seen in writing of any of the stuff of literature here that talks about grinders specifically.
Yeah, it's not entirely true though, although I'm
No,
happy
I
that.
haven't seen it all. I'm not saying I saw everything.
I've sent you all of the documentation that's on the town website, which granted I know the town website can be difficult to navigate, which is why we're working on it. We have the water resources website. With that said, we could potentially look at adding in the appendix some of those documents that are on the website, because I know I've sent them to you previously, or Chris had it as well, that talk about potential O&M costs, talk about maintenance, and to Glenn's point.
But they talk in generalities about everybody's got their own property prepared to hook up. There's
specific documentation from P1 that we have on the website.
Let me suggest this, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I'm lower on totem pole in my understanding of this, and Tom, probably you got some perspective on this, and certainly the engineering staff does, so why don't I ask if some of you want to bring this back for further discussion? That's something you might get a recommendation, so let's revisit it. Get a hold of me or Brian, we'll get it on the agenda. But right now, I feel like, I don't know what else we can say. I appreciate you.
That was one recommendation I had,
Yeah.
maybe.
Okay.
The service contracts, extended warranty.
Well, I know it comes down to the same thing. It's policy decision.
Right. So.
There are more costs involved in who pays.
Yeah.
Homeowner or the town.
Well, the homeowner pays, I think, but I think.
No, but I'm saying that's the decision.
Right.
To be made.
Right.
Or recommendation to be made. It's not that complicated.
I seem to recall a few months ago, when this first came up, there was a discussion about, well, why can't the town, just like with the septic tanks, do a volume buy, get a good volume discount, and then you can pass it on or sell it at a discount to the homeowners.
So what we do is we do buy the first grinder pump for the.
Yeah, the first one is for subsequent, for the replacements. against that.
It'd be nice to have these, get them up there, but you probably won't hold that line up right now.
So to be clear, we buy them
Not
for properties that are mandated.
5 minutes late, I get 5 minutes
Would be nice.
already. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next item. We've got to run out. I don't know who's quorum here, but any public comments? I think we only have one member of the public here, Bruce, so. Nothing else? Matters not anticipated chair. Anybody, anything else here? Many members?
I do want to bring up one minor point.
Go ahead.
We have talked about besides the IA system, other alternative methods. And I would.
You mean like the cranberry bog?
The cranberry bog, the thing.
Yep.
And I think that should be brought to the attention of the town council. These are alternative methods.
We certainly will be doing. Yes, no doubt. Thank you, Brian. Now the most exciting agenda item, I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
Didn't we set the plan?
We already did that meeting. Motion to adjourn. We'll move second.
Second.
You need to vote, Chris?
Nope, we have no one on,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You're excused.